So, imagine before 1850 that Paris is the most disgusting place you could ever imagine. I mean, there's sewage, raw sewage in the street. Most of the city's slums. You gotta understand, most of the city is poor. And so, yeah, there's just everywhere is just old medieval style buildings. They're all crumbling. They're made of wood. It's just a very disgusting city. Just to give you an example, and this is a little bit before 1850 when they changed things, but in the late 1700s, right before the Revolution, there was this place called the Cemetery of the Innocents. Now, this place had been burying people for about 700 years, and the way they would do that was they would dig big holes, put about 1,500 bodies in there, cover it up, do that again and again. They did that for 700 years, and the ground rose 4 meters. And when they run out of space, they would actually take the bones out and bury them and put them along the walls of the cemetery. So these kind of houses grew up of just structures of bones. This place was so disgusting that it could dissolve a body in 9 days. It was literally, people would get sick walking by this place. And it was just right over here. I mean, we could walk to the spot it was in about 3 minutes. And one day if somebody's walking by, he falls in and dies. It's been heard of that somebody was eating at the market next door and a little piece of flesh fell on his food. Just absolutely disgusting. In fact, it came to a huge end when the River Seine flooded and actually rose all the bodies out of the ground, and they broke through the walls into the neighboring restaurants and hotels and homes. And literally people had decomposed bodies in their houses. So finally the king said they were going to close it down. So Louis XVI closed it down, and then they decided to move all the bones to the south of the city. If you guys didn't know this, the city's built on pretty much hollow ground. They actually took all the rock for the city from under the city. So there's actually 300 kilometers of tunnels under the city called catacombs, and this is where they put all the bones from the body. I mean, millions of bones here. You can actually go visit the catacombs. It's really a sight to see. I definitely recommend it. Yeah, it's just incredible how they've arranged it in such a way. So, anyway, that's just to give you an idea of how disgusting the city was. So, Napoleon III comes to power in 1852, and he wants to change the city. Some could argue that this is a way to gentrify the city. Some people could say that it actually did good for the city because it actually made the city more beautiful. But in any way, he hired this guy named George Eugene Haussman. And Haussman had no history in architecture. He was actually more a magistrate, more administrator. But he was very efficient, very smart, very good with money, and very ruthless. So him and Napoleon III got along fine. And with the decrees of Napoleon III, he was able to do big things. They actually smashed down about 60 to 70% of the city. So all these slums, they just took them out. And they replaced them with basically what's right behind me. You'll see a straight cornice line on the roof. So the gray keeps a pretty uniform shape. And then you'll also see the wrought iron balconies that kind of bring everything together. And you'll also see minimalist decoration. There will be some kind of floral decoration, but it is kind of a very classical style, kind of developed for the new era. So when you're going around the city, you're going to see Haussman pretty much everywhere you look. So yes, Haussman did a lot. Smashed down 40,000 houses, rebuilt 20,000 new buildings. He opened up the lane, opened up all the boulevards. They had a kind of a 3-point plan to do this. The idea was to make things more efficient because carriages were really starting to cause a lot of traffic. They were trying to make the city more beautiful, so there's an aesthetic reason, like I said, to kind of make things look more uniform. And then thirdly, they wanted to make it strategic because the 19th century was full of revolutions and rebellions. And people would go in these tiny little streets and they'd make barricades. The troops couldn't get in. Now he wanted to open it up so the troops could easily get in and kind of flank throughout the city. It was a very strategic idea, and it would prove to work a little bit later in 1870 in the Franco-Prussian War. So when you walk around the city, you think about Haussman. I often do. He's a very important figure in French history.